this is, so if we look at the 19th century, so if you look, sorry, the 1800s, okay, if we start there and we go down and we take 1900, what to you are the important dates now I'm going to start the course from around here. We're going to start at 1800. Why 1800? Dates also are random, but economic historians have argued that around 1800, in fact, globally, if you look at the world as a whole, there wasn't a great deal of difference in terms of the inequality between regions. You know, today, Africa is the poor continent, the rich continent is the American North, and Europe and China emerging. Around 1800, that kind of inequality didn't exist. It was more or less globally, despite all the changes and imperialism and colonialism. As late as that, the differences between people wasn't that vast. Now, we're not saying inequality has been part of history, hierarchy, that has been, and the struggle to change inequality has been a motor in history. So I'm not saying it's been perfect, but it was radically less unequal on a global scale than what we have today.
When you speak about
economically, yeah. Okay. So that if you look at the Eastern Cape, you know, people were quite prosperous. If you had to put people in the Eastern Cape and you take people from parts of England, they wouldn't have been, their life chances would have been different, the same more or less. You know, their life chances, their longevity, when they die and how they die and so on. So I'm going to sort of start there more or less. For all the problems and all the growing things were beginning to change then, of course. So this idea of Africa as a continent, it's still worth keeping, but we must know it's not. It doesn't spring from the earth itself or from the air we breathe. Africa is a climate of a continent of diverse climates, geographies, languages, many conflicts, ongoing conflicts. But we also make a political option for saying we think of ourselves because of certain common experiences under colonialism. So the colonial period is an important period to understand, and therefore, I want to start here quickly and move on. Oh, I need to get going. Okay, what else? Any other dates quickly?
1949.
What's 49?
Thing about citizens and which is South Africans were not recognized as citizens.
So 1948 was the declaration of apartheid formally, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I would prefer the 1823, the discovery of the Kimberley mines.
That's 1860s. 1860s.
1860s. Okay.
Good. That's very important. Yes. So 1860s, 1870s. That's the mining, what we call the mineral revolution. Okay, the dramatic impact of mining. First diamonds and then gold. First Kimberley and then the Witwatersrand. Okay, we've got about 5, 6, 7 minutes before I have to. Any other dates?
1912.
Huh?
1912.
Yeah. What is 1912? Huh?
South Africa became a union. 1910.
10, 12 is the ANC. 13 is the Land Act.
Then it's a republic. 1910.
No, 1910 is the Union.
55. 1913 is the
But now tell me something about the rest of the
1913
continent.
is the struggle of women against passes.
Passes, the pass laws.
1952.
What's the other things here?
I think
Elsewhere on the continent. Now, we only have French in Algeria.
1908 in Zimbabwe.
1980, the
Yeah.
freedom of Zimbabwe, yeah?
1956, freedom of Uganda.
56.
Yeah.
Okay. Generally, okay, we've got to. I think we need to catch up with some of the other things here on the rest of the continent. The period,
I think the Namibian and freedom from South Africa
Yeah.
on 1975.
1990.
1990. Yeah.
Okay, what generally how it's going to work, we're going to look at it this way. Look at the period of just before colonial. So by 1800, we see the slave trade still thriving on the continent. Okay, in fact, most of the slaves appear to have been taken out in the 1700s. It was the period of the most hectic activity by the slave trading companies. So by 1800, it's still active. And then, of course, there's the abolition of the slave trade, the outlawing of it in Britain, and then followed in other countries. Then, what they do, they say, these companies, you can't trade in slaves anymore. And they promote what is called legitimate trade. So slave trading becomes illegitimate, illegal. And they then open up the opportunities for other kind of trade, in raw materials, cocoa, the origins of chocolate manufacturing, cocoa. And so they allow companies in, and they encourage companies to come and trade bring manufactured goods from Britain, cotton and other products, and trade with Africans for raw materials. Okay, so you have slavery, the abolition of slavery, then the promotion of legitimate trade. And exactly, and then legitimate trade leads to occupation. And then you land up with the Berlin Conference. Once you have effective occupation, and then it's now competition between these countries. And this is then the period of colonial rule, of formal colonial rule, from the 1870s, 1880s, through to around, when I use this symbol, it means circa, okay? That symbol, when I put that before a date, it means circa. Circa means around, around about, okay? So whenever you see that in writing, you must know could be 59, 58, 61, sometimes you don't want to be so. So this circa 1960 is the era of the beginning of independence in Africa. So 1960 was, Time magazine called it the year of Africa, because so many countries became independent in that year. But you had Ghana became 1956, 57, okay? Sudan, so it's Ghana and Sudan. In fact, it's Sudan before Ghana becomes this is now the era of independence. This is now when the nationalist movements, come into power. Kwame Nkrumah. There's great opportunity and there's hope, like South Africa after 94. But if you look from the Berlin Conference to there, it's 70 years. It's not a long 70, 80 years. Actually, the period of formal colonial rule is not long. But does independence mean the end of colonial influence? That's the question. You see? Does it mean, is it just the rules of the game has changed? That's what we will talk about. So 1960 is a key turning point. Okay. So some people will say, well, it shouldn't be a turning point. It's really not a turning point. That what we should look at is in bigger chunks of time. From 1945, you should think to say 1970. With 1960, just a little formal transfer there, a maneuver to give the black intellectuals and the black elite formal political power, but not economic power.
Yeah.
So here we have, after the Second World War, the Second World War ends in 1945, and now there's a change because after Europe is finished. You know, I mean, just economically they're weak and so on, and they then begin to think we have to get rid of some of these possessions. They're just taxing us, and it's not only that, they not necessarily want to give it over in fully, but the pressures from within, the pressures from the nationalist movements, is forcing them, and they eventually arrive at it in 1960. In many cases, very badly. The operations, like the Sudan problem between North and South, is because the way in which power was transferred, it was in such a haphazard way, without thinking of being equitable and equal to all the provinces. It was just, we know these northerners better than the southerners, let's deal with them, and so on. We can go into detail about each country. So people think of that as a block, with that being a tremendous crisis that hits Africa because of the oil crisis. There was a big oil crisis in 73, massive oil price increases. When oil prices skyrocketed, and it impacted on Africa dramatically, because everything went up. We can look at the causes of it.